In the next 2 minutes, I really want to make you think about what's happening if you read slides to students in your lesson. Now, what's really interesting about what I'm about to tell you is that we already know this. We know this as human beings of how we learn to students, and also what happens when people read slides to us in professional development sessions. So you don't need to go away and read hundreds and hundreds of pages of research reports on this. We already know this as adults. We just need to remember this in our teaching. So what happens then? So if I take you to an example that we put a slide up on the board, it has lots of text on it, immediately students want to start reading it. So we need to understand that students will start reading it immediately. What happens though is when we read things to ourselves, we create like an inner voice in our head, and we can almost hear ourselves reading it back to us. So our kind of inner voice and our inner ear connect, and we hear ourselves reading it to ourselves. The problem happens then when you as a teacher start reading it to students as well, because actually they've got two competing voices. And naturally, you will not be in sync with the inner voice in the person's head because they'll have started reading it as soon as they see it on the board. So it's almost like two music tracks being played that are a second out and they're slightly out of sync. It's horrible. And again, we know this as humans. We know when we're trying to read something, when someone starts reading it a second or two later and they're out of sync with us, it's horrible. And it creates that kind of real cognitive overload issues that we now know more about. But we don't have to be experts in cognitive load to understand that. We know this. All right, so the moral here is don't do that. If you're going to put text on a board, you need to give students a chance to read it and almost get them into a habit of saying, I'm going to put it on the board and I'm not going to say anything at all. And I try to do that now in my professional development sessions where I say right at the start of the session, when I flick a slide over, I'm not going to say anything for a good 5 or 10 seconds. I'll let you read what's on there, then I'll start talking. But I won't just read back what's on there because they've already read it. I will then discuss the main points. So think about it. Think about that competing voice. Think about those two, the inner voice and your voice being slightly out of sync, and just stop doing it because it's not good. And again, we know this already, okay? We already know this, and it's about thinking about how the learning process works and doing more of those things in our classroom consciously so we can make it more effective. Hopefully that's been useful. Like I always say, if it's been useful, join the conversation below, share it, get involved in the conversation in your staff room, and let's start making a difference. Thanks.